Hi, my name is Bilal, and this is my colleague Imran. And today we'll be discussing the issues regarding lesson observations and the lesson observation grading. First, it's important that we understand what a lesson observation is. A lesson observation is a formal or informal observation of teaching while it is taking place. Over to you, Imran.
Right. Uh, in this session, we're going to talk about the quality and accountability related with the lesson observations, and we're also going to talk about uh, the performance management, initial teacher training, and the quality assurance, and how it is useful in terms of external inspection and internal self-assessment and evaluation.
Our argument today is that a lesson observation should be fair, valid, and have a reliable process. Given this definition, and we feel that although there are many benefits and positives to having a lesson observation, there are a few flaws in its practice. So we will be discussing the issues and the solutions with it. How is a lesson observation connected with quality and accountability? One of the most important reasons of having lesson observations is so that staff can be measured on their performance levels. Like in any workforce, whatever staff you have, they must be measured of how well they're performing, whether they're efficient, whether they're not efficient, have they improved since they have been employed, and it's one of the best tools to see whether a teaching member of staff, is performing well, i.e., he's teaching well. The best way to do it is to view his lesson. There's no other way to go about it. You could say that you can use workbooks and essays, etc., to from there you could drag that you could use that as evidence to say that this is a good teacher, this is a bad teacher, or his lessons are at a decent standard. However, sometimes workbooks, essays, etc., don't always give a clear picture of how actually a session is taught, or how actually a session is delivered. Another very important reason, another reason why observations are important, and the link with accountability is for the process during initial teacher training. Now, when just like ourselves, we're trained to become professional teachers. So we're trained to become teachers. We're in the field. The best way to train is to put yourself in the deep end, i.e., to start teaching. And one way to know whether your session, a very good way, and through personal experience, I would say that lesson observations give you that information that a taught session or an essay wouldn't give you. The reason behind this is it's reflecting upon your practice, it's reflecting on what you are actually doing with your learners. Hence, for a teacher who's training, his lesson observations are probably one of the key factors which will drive him or create or make him develop him into the ideal teacher that he would want to be.
Right. One of the another use of the lesson observation is the quality assurance. For example, as an institution, we want to deliver the quality education in the teaching, and obviously, it helps to maintain and improve the quality of education. Therefore, I think the teaching should be observed. Uh, in reality, basically, the whole purpose of the lesson observation is to provide the evidence of quality of teaching and learning process across the curriculum, and to identify the weaknesses in the teaching practice, and so that we're gonna find those weaknesses in the teaching practice, and we're gonna address them in a necessary support through the necessary support. uh, yeah,
Yeah.
go
Should we
on,
go
Bilal.
into the issues?
Yeah, now I'm going to talk about the issues,
There are a
the
few
key issues. Yeah.
sorry. There are a few key issues with lesson observation, as we addressed at the beginning, and obviously these have been criticised and they've been commented on. Many professional teachers have mentioned these on unions, blogs, websites, etc. But some which we have found through our own personal experience would be that the amount of time which is given to an observation itself, i.e., the actual observation which takes place. I personally feel, and I've had Ofsted inspectors inspect one or two of my lessons. I don't know whether I'm fortunate or unfortunate, but that's a different issue. Where sometimes we had a consultant come in who's come in for approximately, I think, 10 minutes of my lesson. although she gave me a good rating, I would say that if it was another teacher, how can you judge a lesson on a mere 10 minutes? It's practically not enough. She could come in, he or she may possibly walk in the starter where you haven't developed anything yet, where you haven't challenged able learners, where you haven't challenged the less able or the more able. Whereas if a lesson observation should be throughout your whole session, where from start to finish the observer would see the development that the observee has made for his. He can see the differentiation. He can see the three cores. He can see the different cognitive challenging skills which have been taking place in the lesson. In addition to this, I also feel that the frequency observations. I've heard, speaking to colleagues in the teaching field, they've told me that frequency of observation is an issue in their context where they're too close together. They're not spread out. There's not enough time given in between them for the member of staff, for the teacher to develop. It's very difficult for somebody to develop enough or to develop satisfactorily if he's having an observation twice a month, for example. There's just not enough time for him to develop. So I do feel that there needs to be given a teacher needs to be given sufficient time in order to develop his skills and to develop according to what the observation, according to the recommendations the observation has the observer has given to him. Also with this, I feel that sometimes there's a lot of senior pressure in an observation where, you have your seniors, you have your line manager, you've got your head teacher, for example, at times possibly where he's coming and or he or she's coming and they're observing lesson. Now sometimes some people, because of confidence, they might not perform as well as they should. Whereas if it was a peer-to-peer observation, if it was a peer of theirs, or maybe somebody not so senior, it would have been easier for them. In addition to this, another solution which I feel is very, very helpful, and I've experienced it myself as well, is that as an observee who's always observed, I've been given the opportunity to go and actually observe other lessons. So I've gone in to observe a lesson, and I'm actually given a grading, etc. And from that, I learned so much more than I would have from my own lesson, because I can relate, I can compare it to my own practice. I can see what he's doing efficiently and he's doing in his practice, and I can see where he is possibly going wrong and where I could, if I was to do that, go wrong, or where I could actually improve. So I feel that possibly sometimes the observee should become the observer, which will definitely help in his reflection and most definitely help in his development.
Right. There is another key issue we believe that is the knowledge of the observer. And I mean, like, for example, I'm teaching a computer science subjects, and if I would be observed with an observer who basically hasn't got any knowledge of computer science, so I believe it's difficult for him to judge my teaching techniques, the way I teach, because obviously when you teach different subjects, there are different techniques to deliver the teaching and learning, different methods, the different resources you use in terms of different subjects. So the solution, obviously, the observer should have sufficient knowledge to observe a lesson because it's very important. There is another key issue we explored is the method of the feedback, and we believe that the method of feedback should be straight after the observation, and it should be verbal and written, obviously, and the feedback should not be like very critical, like, I mean, the observer can take in a discouraging way, and it should not be very critical. It should be like in a coaching style, because ultimately we want to improve the performance of the teacher. So the style of the teaching, to improve the style of the teaching, so the method should be positive and in a coaching style.
Just to add to the issue that Imran just examined about the method of feedback and not being so critical, giving feedback in more of a coaching style, having a one-to-one sort of based on feedback rather than just having a written document. I think that's very important. But with that, I think there's a more prevailing issue of when your lessons are graded, i.e. the Ofsted grading of outstanding, good, room for improvement, inadequate. I feel that as soon as you're given that label, sometimes, especially if you're in the bottom end, if you're a teacher trainer, at the beginning you are at the bottom end. It can be quite discouraging at times. And I've seen a colleague of mine, from an observation, is quite discouraged because of it. But again, all the issues prevail to it that the observer only came in for 10 minutes. How could he give the whole lesson inadequate if he only came for 10 minutes? There's not enough time for development as a second issue. There was senior pressure, hence it led to the inadequateness of the lesson. So I feel that the issue of grading is possibly not just a separate issue, but it's kind of interlinked with all the other issues as well.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an issue where I think we can't do without it, because there needs to be an outcome of the observation. It needs to be, okay, that was a good lesson, or that was a satisfactory lesson, that was a bad lesson. There has to be something at the end. You can't just say that, okay, this is observation, and it's all in the air and there's no concrete.
Well, for me, to be honest, I slightly disagree with the grading criteria. For me, I think if you're going to grade someone's teaching, it is a little bit more critical towards judging and assessing someone's teaching practice. So, for me, to be honest, ideally it should be towards management side instead of sharing the grading with the observee. I think the feedback is enough for the observee to improve the teaching practice instead of grading someone's teaching style or practice. And I want to mention one more thing, because I have just practiced that experience, that I think when observer, it's kind of key issue for me, according to my practical experience, that the student feedback should be the part of the judgment when observer makes some judgment or give feedback to the observee. I think the observer should take the feedback from the class, that how the learning went, how did they learn anything, is the learning delivered, and in making judgment. So I think the student feedback is also a key issue, and it should be included when the observer gonna make the judgment.
Yeah.
You wanna say anything?
I think
Because that's just my practical
definitely,
experience.
I think that's a wrap, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this video in regards to the issues surrounding lesson observations and grading, and I think we'll get a good reflection out of this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.